Canucks are finally doing it. They're rebuilding. But after 15 years of short-term fixes and disastrous trades, the question isn't if they'll try, it's if they have the guts to do it perfectly. Today we're modeling the exact 7-step roadmap the Sedins and Ryan Johnson must follow this summer to turn this roster into a Stanley Cup contender. From the 2026 draft to a trade that will shock the market, this is what a flawless Canucks offseason actually looks like. Let's dive right into it. So we're going to go over an article that talks about this exact topic. This one brought to us by The Athletic, none other than, of course, Thomas Drance. And as you can see, the title is What the Vancouver Canucks' Perfect Rebuilding Offseason Could Look Like in 2026. This is the first offseason of a new rebuilding era for the Vancouver Canucks, given the precarious nature of where Vancouver sits, how shorthanded this team is from a talent perspective, and how long the road back to contention is likely to be, even if everything goes right, even if everything goes perfectly, only serves to underline the importance of the next 4 weeks for the first-year Canucks GM, Ryan Johnson, and the first-year co-Tohos, Henrik and Daniel Sedin. Rebuilding is a difficult assignment in the NHL, but it's an even more difficult task in the current league-wide environment. The salary cap is rising quickly, negating some of the levers that teams like the Montreal Canadiens, for example, pulled in rebuilding over the past 5 years. The current CBA will expire this summer, with significant implications for what various contracts will look like in the years to come. Vancouver, meanwhile, needs to continue to shed long-term contractual commitments to aging players with various forms of no-move or no-trade protection, and the club will have to nail the 2026 NHL Draft, at which it has a total of 10 draft picks, including 4 in the top 50 alone. Let's model out how new Canucks leadership would navigate this summer if they were to put together a genuinely perfect offseason. Number 1. Shed at least 2 of the 7 Canucks players in their late 20s or older, signed to long-term contracts with some variety of no-trade or no-move protection through trade and creatively maximize the value of the return. So we're talking the likes of Filip Hronek, Jake DeBrusk, Brock Besser, guys like that. The most important thing for the Canucks to recognize as their starting point this offseason isn't that they're in a rebuild, it's that they effectively have nothing that a good team or a future contender really requires. You certainly should hope for and work toward developing the likes of Zeev Buium, Braden Coots, and Tom Willander into future core players, but their profiles aren't those of the elite players that drive Stanley Cup victories for franchises historically. Even if all 3 of them hit their absolute apex ceiling outcomes as NHL players, for example, say Buium can develop into a defender as dynamic as prime Morgan Rielly, Coots evolves into a Matthew Barzal-like impact forward, and maybe Willander transforms into some right-handed hybrid version of a Gustav Forsling. You'd still be a franchise-level superstar or 2 short of contending. Vancouver's first mission under the stewardship of the Sedins and Johnson must be to effectively construct a new elite core to power the next great Canucks team. It's widely recognized that this process is going to take years to pull off. It's also going to require additional kicks at the can at the draft table and a massive surplus of draft capital. None of this is especially controversial or in dispute. Where the logic of this sort of patient rebuilding process can get a bit trickier for fans and even NHL management types to really account for and internalize is when it comes to the necessity of storing value in places where it's relatively unlikely to depreciate as a team undergoes the sort of youth movement that the Canucks will attempt to begin to pull off this summer. This is where the rubber meets the road for the Canucks this summer. It's going to take Johnson and the Sedin years, likely the balance of this decade, to construct a championship-caliber core. In the meantime, the veteran players the Canucks acquired and signed to long-term contracts for the purposes of supporting the Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, and Quinn Hughes-led core are likely to age out of being useful. Let's use Filip Hronek as an example, given that he's the best player among this group of veterans we're discussing, and he's also probably the one who has the most trade value. Hronek was acquired as a top 4 defender and has become a legit star-level first-pair defender during his 3.5-year tenure with the Canucks. He's also turning 30 in November. Hronek is signed to an appealing long-term contract carrying an efficient $7.25 million cap hit for another 6 seasons through his age 35 campaign in 2031-2032. The likelihood that Hronek remains a high-end top-of-the-lineup defenseman when Vancouver's next generation of star talent is ready to win is prohibitively low. He'll also continue to play his physical, abrasive style of defensive hockey while logging a ton of minutes for an overmatched side that's unlikely to control play with much regularity over the short term, taking on significant injury risk. In Thomas's view, this level of depreciation risk should be intolerable for the Canucks to bear, especially given Hronek's status as the organization's last remaining premium trade asset, as we mentioned. This logic is felt most sharply in Hronek's case, but it holds generally for Marcus Pettersson, Thatcher Demko, Jake DeBrusk, Brock Besser, Elias Pettersson, and Kevin Lankinen. There are nuances to when the value of each of these players may spike somewhat due to their contract structure, and some of them are obvious holds, the 2 goaltenders in particular this summer, and of course, all of these players have some variety of no trade or no move clause, which will make it extraordinarily difficult for Vancouver to hold open auctions for their services of the variety that are necessary to maximize a player's value on the trade market. With all of this in mind, in a perfect offseason, new Canucks management would find a way to jettison at least 2 of this group of players over the course of the next few months, and they do so in a fashion that returns maximum value, with Vancouver avoiding retention given the lengths of the contracts and the importance of preserving retention slots for future trade deadline selling purposes. So again, the likes of Jake DeBrusk, Marcus Pettersson, we just said Demko and Lankinen not likely, but those types. And we've already heard a lot about when it comes to the possibility of Jake DeBrusk possibly being moved before the start of the season. In fact, we even heard that Ottawa might be interested in Jake DeBrusk's services. The question is, what will we get from Ottawa? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think we could get as a package for DeBrusk from Ottawa? Do you think it could involve draft picks or maybe a young player? Let me know in the comments. That may mean the club will have to be willing to eat an efficient contract, perhaps one with term, in order to properly juice the potential asset haul netted in the deal. It may mean that the Canucks speculate on a younger, struggling veteran player with an opportunity to rebuild their value. The returns should absolutely prioritize netting futures and veteran players with distressed value, as opposed to the club speculating in classic and unwelcome Canucks fashion on reclamation-type prospects and age gap trade targets. Properly rebuilding requires that the club continues to intentionally and thoughtfully dismantle this existing roster. That process began in earnest last fall with the trades of Hughes, Tyler Myers, and Connor Garland. It must continue this summer. Number 2, identify and affordably acquire veteran competitors with leadership skills to offset the losses of veteran players in trades. There is an enormous and undeniable value in employing and maintaining tested, experienced professional players in any NHL locker room. We'd be naive to ignore that. If the Canucks do what's necessary and act decisively to continue to dismantle this roster by moving off some high-character veterans this summer, then they should also be intentional about replacing their intangible impact as role models and leaders in the locker room. And they should look to do so affordably as well. Whether it's through free agency or on the trade market, finding affordable ways to acquire high-quality people like a Luke Schenn, a Troy Stecher, Colton Sissons, or a Brendan Gallagher, someone who we've talked about on this channel, players with local ties who would be proud to wear Canuck colors and wear the crest, represent this community, and are the types of professionals who can keep an even keel even in the absence of wins. To offset the losses of whatever veteran players the Canucks trade away would be a significant plank of any perfect offseason. Number 3, Draft to optimize value and the probability of selecting a star-level contributor with zero regard for positional need. This Canucks amateur scouting staff, which incoming Vancouver management has largely left intact, has done some decent, if uneven, work over the past 6 years. Certainly, the club has managed to reliably identify good value later on in drafts out of Ontario and Sweden in particular. It should be noted, too, that while Canucks amateur scouting could be more efficient overall, the far bigger issue over the years has been the club's lack of draft capital and limited kicks at the can. Too frequently, however, we've seen the Canucks appear to prioritize tools and athleticism, like with Danila Klimovich, Johnny Yermo, or even Tom Willander, over pure hockey talent when high-end hockey talent is still on the board, the likes of Logan Stankoven, Justin Sordev, or a Zach Benson. While the club would never publicly admit this, I also think it's entirely reasonable to suggest that we've also seen the club select for positional need with both of their most recent first-round picks. Maybe it's all just a big coincidence, but Vancouver's biggest need at the NHL level entering the 2023 draft was a right-handed defenseman. Lo and behold, the club selected a right-handed defenseman in Willander with the number 11 selection. The Canucks' biggest need at the NHL level entering the 2025 draft, similarly, was a center. Lo and behold, the club selected Braden Coots with the number 15 overall selection. Coots and Willander could absolutely still pay off their selections, but the reasonable presumption that the Canucks have been attempting to team build through the draft is suggestive of a concerning process. The draft, after all, isn't a team building exercise, it's a value building exercise. Positional premiums shouldn't really matter on draft day because most of the players being selected won't be NHL difference makers in any event. Value isn't determined by position in hockey. Teams don't even pay wingers less than they pay centers, and they don't even pay right-handed defenders more than they pay left-handed defenders. It's determined by impact and quality. A smallish winger, provided they're a two-way player and a playoff difference maker, will always carry more value than a right-handed defender who hasn't proven that they can hang in top 4 minutes. A productive winger who's proven that they can play on the first line and produce will always carry more value than a middle six center. In a perfect offseason, the Canucks will draft for value and will break their bad habit of leaning too heavily on athletic tools and player evaluations and just take the best player available with all 10 of their currently owned 2026 draft picks, including all 4 of their picks in the top 50. Number 4, add some toughness to the lineup both through free agency and by extending Curtis Douglas. You need a bit of toughness during a rebuild. There are going to be games where you're getting blown out at home, your top rookie has had an ugly turnover on the second goal allowed, and your star player has had a ghastly outing. And no matter how bought in your market is to the big picture, rebuilding effort, it's still your 3rd loss in a row. During those games, you'll more likely than not be able to feel that fatalistic, impatient restlessness at Rogers Arena. In response, rebuilding teams need a little bit of that old school hockey showmanship, a big player that can go out there and goon it up and get kicked out of the game, and in so doing, both demonstrates to the fans that this team isn't going to take this either and shares your frustration. Then post-game, back in the locker room, who do all the Vancouver media types flock to tell the story of the game? It isn't the struggling rookie or the annoyed star player, it's the affable, tough guy who stood up for his teammates and changed the narrative around a losing team, if only for just one game. Vancouver lacked this quality throughout last season until it acquired Curtis Douglas off of waivers. Thereafter, there were a lot of games where Douglas's efforts to score his first career NHL goal became a feel-good storyline down the stretch of a lost season, and there were a ton of moments where Douglas's willingness to stand up for teammates was a welcome addition and proved infectious as a variety of other Canucks players also got into the act. Douglas won't be expensive to extend, but doing so feels like a no-brainer given Vancouver's current situation. Extending Douglas would also be just the start. But I'd even suggest that the Canucks should add even more of this sort of grit, pending UFAs such as Beck Malenstein, AJ Greer, or Ryan Lomberg would also fit. Not gonna lie, I do like the idea of Ryan Lomberg with his name being thrown out there. Number 5, we have extend Zeev, Buium, and Ohgren under the contractual rules prior to the new CBA kicking in on September 15th, 2026. In a rising cap environment, should this rate of cap growth prove endemic, the market value of various players is likely to begin to reset on an annual basis. This is what we've seen in leagues like the NFL, where 25 to 30 million annualized cap growth has been the norm across the past decade, and it's likely coming to the NHL as well. If you want to score big contractual wins in this sort of environment, the only way to do so is to bet big and bet early on promising players before they've demonstrated their true value. Think about the Jackson Blake deal that the Carolina Hurricanes signed last summer, back when he had 34 career points in 82 career games, and before he morphed into a clear top-line caliber offensively talent and playoff game breaker this past season. The stakes of doing this during a perfect 2026 offseason are even higher, given that the NHL and NHLPA collective CBA will expire on September 15th. Thereafter, a variety of contractual structure rules will be tightened, making it more difficult for teams to structure long-term contracts in a way that can create future trade value. Vancouver has a one-time only opportunity to consider long-term extensions under the current rules with some of its more promising young players, and given the cap and competitive situation, the club can't afford to take on a bit of a risk on this file. Locking up the likes of Buium and Ohgren to long-term second contracts with a chance to pay off in a major way seems like an absolute no-brainer. Number 6, we have prioritized adding veteran players with a high probability of enhancing their exchange value in free agency. With Miller and Hughes both already gone, if the Canucks ever do move Hronek, their arsenal of premium trade assets will be entirely depleted. You need valuable futures to fuel a rebuild, but the Canucks are quickly running out of the sort of trade capital required to produce said extra first-round picks that the organization will need if it hopes to build a championship-level team in the future. In a perfect offseason, Johnson and the Sedins will be mindful of creating a second wave of tradable assets to further fuel this rebuild, and will place some smart bets on the trade market or in free agency on players with the ability and profiles to grow into significant trade chips. Essentially, Canucks should be looking to create a conveyor belt that churns out Kiefer Sherwood-type trade assets. It should be fueled by the club pursuing useful, high-character players in free agency with the sort of attributes: physical, fast winger, right-handed centers, right-handed defenders that teams will reliably value enough to trade for at the deadline. The depth player trade market is the area where positional premiums matter, not the NHL draft. Considering big money short-term offers that I've advocated for is one route of accomplishing this, but there are some value free agents and even some intriguing trade targets around the league that could also fit the bill. And lastly, number 7, don't waste this opportunity to dismantle the roster and commit to the rebuild. Right now, the Canucks are speaking about rebuilding in a way they've never previously spoken about it before. Ownership appears to be on board, finally. Management appears to be on board. New head coach Manny Malhotra appears to be on board, and the fans in the city are fully bought in to the lowered short-term expectations direction that Vancouver appears to be charting. This is a unique opportunity for the Sedins and Johnson to continue to tear down this roster and actually go about executing a rebuild. And it's a unique opportunity because while everyone is speaking as if the Canucks will be patient about this rebuilding effort, we have 15 years of previous organizational behavior that strongly suggests that patience isn't generally a virtue that the franchise especially prizes. Right now, the Canucks have an opportunity to go about making these sort of rebuilding moves that this franchise has snarled and contorted and struggled to try to avoid over a decade and a half of disastrous team building strategy. Who's to say that this sort of license, this sort of organizational buy-in will still be in place in the summer of 2027 or in the summer of 2028. Certainly, given that Johnson and Malhotra reportedly signed matching 3-year contracts, the organizational pressure to begin to deliver progress is likely to start to ramp up as soon as next summer. It would be naive to rule out the possibility that this particular leopard hasn't changed its spots, as in Aquilini, as much as it's changed the way its message is being delivered this summer. There is a rule in politics that leaders should never waste a crisis. In a perfect offseason, the Sedins and Johnson would proceed with some level of destructive urgency, even as they go about executing the sort of rebuild that will require patience to pull off. So there's the article. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think about these 7 steps that Henrik and Daniel Sedin and Ryan Johnson need to go by for this roadmap regarding this rebuild? Let me know in the comment section. Do you guys agree with these 7 steps? Do you think if the Sedins and Johnson follow these 7 steps, do you think it will lead to the Canucks becoming a Stanley Cup contender maybe 5 years from now? Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. And of course, if you guys enjoyed this video, on your way out, you can like the video and you can subscribe to the Line Change for more Canucks and draft related content. You can also become a member of the Line Change by hitting that join button to receive exclusive perks. You get members only videos, you get behind the scenes stuff, and early access to videos such as like the one you are watching right now. And now, an important message from our friends over at DraftKings. It all comes down to this: a best of 7 battle, and DraftKings has you covered every step of the way. The DraftKings Sports app is now available in all 50 states and includes all markets. Sweat every shift of the series all in one place with one app. New DraftKings customers sign up with code THPN, spend $5 to get $200 in rewards within 21 days. That's code THPN in partnership with DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Bet with DK Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 1-800-MY-RESET. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino in Kansas, that text pass-through may apply in Illinois. 21 and over. Void in Ontario. Event contract trading with DraftKings predictions involves risk of loss. Sportsbook bonus bets expire in 7 days. $50 in predictions dollars issued weekly for 3 weeks expire in 1 year. Redeem one non-withdrawable reward. Availability varies. Predictions offer void in New York. Ends June 28. Terms at dkng.co/audio.
Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.